Welcome back to this new Inkscape tutorial. Today we're going to discuss something that becomes critically important when you are working through a very congested workflow. Perhaps you have a project and you're busy, there are so many objects on the page. We're going to discuss understanding your document and why this is important. You need to understand where the objects are, how to navigate your way through a complicated file with lots of shapes, with different colors, some transparent and with fills and strokes, and maybe in levels behind another level. So we like to understand how to organize them, because it becomes critically important through a workflow to know where every single item is and how to find them and how to bring them together and how they interact with the entire document. And then we will learn how to group these objects. Sometimes it's very, very critical that certain objects that we don't want to change their location or position in the design in the canvas stays grouped together. So when we move them, we want to move them all together. When we work on other things, we can bring them back again to where they were. We want to look at these properties and see how to find hidden objects. Some objects may be behind another object, not in a different level, on the same in a different layer, in the same layer, but in a different level. And also that will lead to understanding the hierarchy of objects as we create them on the canvas, and how certain actions such as duplicate can affect the hierarchy of the various objects. So when we do this, it makes workflow easy. We become more in control of our document, and that helps us to enjoy work as we do it. So let's dive in quickly and see how we're going to create objects so that we can have something to work with. So I'm going to create these objects intentionally on a row because we want to understand why each one stays on the level they are. Remember the property. Remember we spoke about Inkscape. Inkscape remembers what we did last. So right now it recalls that we made Pac-Man shapes like this the last time, and the last color was pink. So I'm going to just close this. I want this complete circle, and let's have here a polygon, and we want there we go. I want a star, and let's have here a polygon, and we want okay, I'm just going to delete one. This was the last one created. Now let's just change the colors of these objects. Let's give you a green just to differentiate them. Let's make you a yellow, and let's make you a turquoise. Let's make you red. Now if you recall, I created this block first. So what this means is that on the same layer, all these objects are on one layer. On the same layer, this block will be the lowest object. So when I click and hold like this and drag it, I want to go down. It's under the Pac-Man, it's under the circle, it's under the pentagon, it's under the star. So the principle here is that the first object that you create always stays on the last level on the canvas. So I want to do like this so you can see them all brought together. Here we go. So these are the hierarchy of objects as you create them in Inkscape. So if you like to change them, the hierarchy, for instance, if you want the Pac-Man to go behind the box, you simply select this object. If you want it to go further down beyond all things right at the back, you use this one. It takes it back. If you want it to move through levels coming up, you use this one, and it goes up and it goes up. Now I'm pretty sure it's right on top of the star. If I move up, okay, let's move it. It hasn't gone there yet. Let's keep cycling till we get up there. Here we go. So right there on top of the star. So this is how to move around upwards or downwards. Something else that can change the order of hierarchy is by using a duplicate function. So let's say this box is right at the back as it is. If I right click and say duplicate, the copy rises above all the objects on the page. It becomes the last created object as a matter of principle, as we can see here. I'm just going to delete it. And another way to get this duplicate done is to hit Command D if you're on a Mac, or Control D if you are on a Windows keyboard. And when you do that, you get a duplicate right there, and it rises above all the layers. I'm just going to delete that again. Another way to do it is to copy and paste as well. So you can right click, sorry, let me just move back a bit. So select the block, you can right click and say copy and paste. And when I do that, also it is created, but notice that it does not rise above the rest of the objects like the duplicate. So when you copy an item, it gives you a second object, but it stays on the layer. So this comes in handy when you don't want to disturb the order, the hierarchy of the objects. In certain designs, you will see where it becomes quite useful to keep things where they are while you work on them on the very same level. So this box just went above itself, and that's it. It's underneath everything else. I'm going to delete that. Another way to do the duplicate is the Control C. So in Control C, if you are on Windows, and Command C to copy. So you select the object, Command C, and Command V to paste. And there we have it. Okay, let's delete that. So that's it about duplicating and how it affects the layers, the levels in one layer. Quite important to highlight that this is not a different layer. We're going to deal with layers later on in one of our videos, but this is in one level. But now let's talk about grouping objects. When you have lots of objects, multiple objects on your page, you may want to group them into little segments of easy to manage groups. So I'm just going to duplicate this and let's make it a little more complicated. So let's give these different colors so we can see them. No, that's not so different. Let's use that. There we go. Okay, so here are objects on the page. So now we're designing something. We're on a workflow for a client, and there are so many things on our page, and now we're trying to keep things organized. Now, what if you want to group together this object and that object? All you do is you select the one you want to group, you hold down Shift and select the second one. Now these two objects are selected, but we want to keep it permanently selected for as long as we want. So what we do, you go to Objects and you navigate down to Groups. You can see there as well the keyboard shortcut is Command G or Control G if you're on Windows. So just select Group and it's now grouped together. So that means whenever I click on this and move it, I'll go with this. See that? Okay. Now, whatever I do to this object as a group will affect entire objects in the group. So I change the color and it changes all the colors. If I make it black, everything becomes black. Go back. Now, what if I wanted to select a couple of objects on this page and keep them as a group? So I want this pink. You then hold down the Shift key and select the next object that you want to keep together as a group. So I want this Pac-Man as well, and I want the star. So if I go to Objects and say Group, it keeps them together, as you can see. Now I can move it together, so no matter what happens when I'm working with other objects, I move things around. I move those around. The moment I select these, they will go together as a group, and that's how the group level works. So this helps when you're trying to keep work organized. You don't want these to move the way you've placed them next to each other. You can keep them all tightly knit together. Now let's talk about how to select objects on a page. Sometimes you may have objects that has different properties, different colors and shapes and opacities. You may begin to search for some of them because it's gone under another. Let's take, for instance, we have this block here, and let's assume we didn't know it's behind this guy. Let's cover you. So our red block is behind the pentagon, and we're working, and all of a sudden we wonder, where is the block? How do we find it? Well, one way to find it is by hitting constantly the tab key. What it does is it cycles through every single object on the page. So let me deselect. When I hit tab the first time, it selects the Pac-Man. When I hit it again, it moves to the circle, and again to the pentagon, and again to the star, and again. Here we go. It has found our little block hiding behind the pentagon. And this is how we find our objects. Now, if I want to select this object and move it, if I clicked on it, it will not move. It will rather move the pentagon on top. So what we can do while it's here is that we can go up there and raise it up to the top if that's what we want. Let me undo that. Another way to do this, if an object is hidden, I'm just going to go back. Oh, first of all, before I forget, I just wanted to, okay, let me just quickly put it back there. Let me put it back there. So our hidden object is there. I wanted to mention, when you hold the tab key, if you hold it down, it will keep cycling through all the objects, and this is good until you find what you're looking for. And notice that when it comes to this grouped object, it treats it as a group. It does not select the single object. So I just thought I should mention this, because you may be looking for one item that's nested into a group, and if you don't find it, you might wonder where it's gone. So just remember, when an object is grouped, or when an object is nested in a group, the entire group acts or is viewed as one item, one object. So even your recycling tab will select it together as a group. It will not be found as a single object. That's cleared. Now let me go back to what I was explaining concerning finding a hidden object. So assuming that our block is hidden behind this pentagon, we had no clue it's here and we want to find it, we use the tab key because it can show us every single thing on the page, and we found it. But what if there are a couple of other layers behind, or we want to select that object, we want to find it. We know it's here, and we want to select it without moving this particular one. So if we don't want to use the tab function, the function we used earlier, and raise it up, I will hover with my mouse over the object. You hold down the Option key if you're on Mac, or the Alt key if you're on Windows. You hold it down and you click the first time. When you click the first time, it selects the object on top. When you click a second time, there we go, it reveals the object at the back. And if you want, you can continue holding the Alt key and you're able to drag and move this object if you want to move it. And of course, if you don't want to move it, you simply use our raise object button to bring it to the top. So that's quite a handy feature. And some of these things may not make a lot of sense at the beginning why we need these functions, but as we go deeper into our design and workflow, you begin to see why this is such, it can be such a handy feature in this Inkscape as a design software. I just want to show you how groups can also be multiple. Let me show you quickly. So I just want to move this aside. So here we have a group up there. If we want to duplicate this group, we make a duplicate, and here's another group, and we can duplicate that, and here's another group. So we give it a color. Let's make you all brown, and let's call it group brown. Group brown and group light green and group red. Okay, so these are groups, but we can also select the groups themselves and group them again, and we just hit Command G if you're on Mac, or Control G. And if we want to add another group, we can add another group. We just hold down Shift and hit Command G. Now they are all in one group, and that's, we can move it around and we can manipulate them all together. Now, what if we want to ungroup them? So we hit our shortcut key, which is Command U. So now notice how it also ungroups in the same order that they were grouped. So if I click on the side and select this, these two are still stuck together as one group, and the last group that was added to the entire group was released first. It's no longer part of the group. If I hold down as well, click that and hit the shortcut key Command U to ungroup, now they are now ungrouped. And if I selected all of them, just want to go back, if I selected all of them, so select that, hold down Shift, select that, hold down Shift, and let's make it a group. So Control G. Now they are all one entire group. But if I select them and Command U ungroup them, the first time they are all non-ungrouped. If I continue to ungroup, it takes them back to individual objects. Notice that now this is a separate object, this is separate, this is separate, and they all now function again as they were from the beginning as separate entities. So the point here is that when we group objects, just like the object hierarchy, when they appear on top of the next one as you draw them in succession, the groupings also happen in the same progression. So the last object that was grouped is the first to be separated from the group when you ungroup. And if you keep on hitting ungroup, it will eventually ungroup every single item that made the first primary groups that eventually became brought together as secondary groups, and so on. So I just thought I should highlight that as well, and in understanding workflow and how objects are grouped together. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.